What's up, guys? Rick here with the DFS preview for this week's Farmers Insurance Open. And don't fast forward a couple of really important things before we jump into this. This event is going to start on Wednesday, and it's going to run Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That is an attempt by the PGA Tour to not compete with the NFL on Conference Championship Sunday. So make sure your lineups are in. Make sure your one-and-done picks are in. Make sure your bets are in, because I assure you that I will get emails Wednesday evening that say, "What? This is a Wednesday start? I can't believe it. What happened?" Yada, yada, yada. Additionally, because we are starting on Wednesday this week, that changes the content schedule. You're obviously watching right now the DFS preview. On Monday, there will be a Twitter space. If you haven't joined in on a Twitter space yet, it's your opportunity to come on and join the conversation about this week's Farmers Insurance Open. That's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday. The Tuesday Scramble will still be Tuesday, but it'll be moved up an hour. That will now be 11 a.m. Tuesday. The Rick Run Good live chat, which is normally on Wednesdays, now on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Another Twitter space on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then the Jock Market Power Hour moved up a day. You guessed it, 8:15 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. So it's going to be a lot of content crammed into a very short period of time. So I appreciate and I thank you for your likes and your subscriptions and your comments below with who you think is going to win the Farmers Insurance Open. And of course, if you're going to be at the event, so will I. I'll be there Friday and Saturday. Those are the final two rounds. I will tweet out my location if you want to come say hi or grab a drink or whatever it might be. It's always good to meet up with you guys. So I will be there. Check my Twitter feed if you'll be there as well. Certainly feel free to reach out. But otherwise, I love this event. I love this course so much. Let's jump into it. All right, Torrey Pines, love this course, or should I say courses, because we do have another rotation in play this week. The North course will be used all over the course of the first two rounds. So each golfer will play one round at the South, one at the North, and then there will be a cut, and everyone will go back to the South course. That's the more famous course. It's the one that hosted the U.S. Open last year. So 3 rounds on the South and 1 on the North. They've tried to close the gap between these two courses in recent years. The North course used to be super easy and play so much less difficult than the South course did. That gap is kind of closing a little bit. I think last year the gap was pretty sizable, like 3 shots difference across the courses. The year before that, I think it was 1.8. There's a stretch of holes, a 3-hole stretch on the North course called the Undertow that they've really tried to ramp up the difficulty on, and if you're not careful, it will pull your golfers out to sea. No, nothing? Undertow? Okay, well, the South course and the North course, they both have this Kikuyu rough. If you've never played on it, it is super thick. You are really at the mercy of the lie that you get. There are often times where us as amateur golfers, we would just have to hack a wedge back out in the fairway, because hitting a long iron out of this stuff can be incredibly difficult. You can get a lot of grass in between your ball and the club face. The pros are obviously much better at it than we are, but it's still going to cause issues and will cause issues around the green as well. If you look at the metrics, historically, and this is kind of interesting because historically, driving accuracy has not been a correlator to success at this event, which is a bit counterintuitive, but when you think about it, it makes a lot more sense, because driving distance is a very strong correlator to success over the years. This is literally looking at every golfer and every stat on the PGA Tour over the last 12 years, where the types of golfers have had success. And basically what it says is long, inaccurate drivers have correlated very well at Torrey Pines. The driving distance debate, it's more than just driving distance. And Bryson DeChambeau was the perfect example of this at Winged Foot. You get driving distance because you have club head speed. And club head speed also allows you to extract the ball from thick rough better than your peers. So it does start to make a lot more sense when you look at this and say, okay, driving distance, aka guys that have a fast club head speed, are having success here. They're either bombing it and staying in the fairway, or they're bombing it, hitting it out of the rough, and they're extracting the ball better than their peers. So it's an exciting little nugget to go with. We'll throw that in the custom model at the end of the episode. Also, the POA greens on the South Course, you're going to hear that countless times throughout the week because POA is such a unique strain of grass. It's very bumpy. It's kind of hard to read and understand. Some guys hate it. Some guys love it. So it really is going to be a sizable storyline for this week, and I'll show you some guys that generally putt well on that surface. And before I jump to the cheat sheet, let me take you over to the power rankings because I think it's a really good place to start, get our finger on the pulse of the players who are coming in trending well. I've added the salaries to the power rankings tool basically out of the request of most listeners and viewers because it's just a little bit easier to sort through. So what you're looking at right now is the last 50 rounds of raw strokes gained. So that's why Taylor Moore is, quote, the second best player in this field, because these are raw metrics. He only has, of these 50 rounds, more than half of them are Korn Ferry Tour rounds. So that really helps him there. If we were to go over to the weighted side, you would see he would drop from second probably down to 15, 16, 17, something like that. But you'll notice Jon Rahm is number one. That's something we've talked about countless times. Sam Burns, outside of Taylor Moore, is next. And Daniel Berger is there as well. Those are two guys that I don't think most people would include as a top 5 player because you've got Justin Thomas as well. You've got Dustin Johnson here. You've got Hideki and Xander and Bryson. So those guys have been very, very good. If you go over to the weighted side of this, and we take it to just players in this field, and we do 50 rounds as well, you're going to see Taylor Moore drops to, he actually dropped further than I thought, didn't he? Oh my goodness. Yeah, he drops all the way down to 41st. I actually was giving him a bit too much credit there. But Daniel Berger in the last 50 rounds, it's a sizable gap from Jon Rahm, but he's the second best player in this field in weighted strokes gained total. Bryson is third, DJ is fourth, Justin Thomas is fifth. We're going to talk about those guys because this is shaping up to be a great field, and we've got to start considering the pricing. 6 golfers over $10,000. Jon Rahm leads the way at $11,200, down to Daniel Berger at a flat $10,000, with Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama, Dustin Johnson, and Xander Schauffele in the mix as well. And I got to admit, my head is spinning on this pricing. Not that I necessarily don't agree with it. I'm just a little bit surprised by it. The $9,000 range that we're going to get to in a second has some values. I love the respect for Daniel Berger at $10,000, but I think that's going to be a bit more difficult to pay. I would have loved to have rostered Daniel Berger this week, but at $10,000, it feels a little bit hairy. To see Justin Thomas be the second most expensive golfer and Hideki be the third most expensive golfer, I would have priced this out a little bit differently. So what do we end up doing here? Jon Rahm continues to be in a class of his own. He's $11,200. He has been phenomenal at Torrey Pines. The win in 2017, the 3 consecutive top 7 finishes, plus you throw in the win at the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines. So what I recommend a lot of you do is you actually go over to the Holy Grail, and you can sort not only by event, but by course. So if you sort by Torrey Pines, that will also lump in the U.S. Open from last year along with the Farmers Insurance Open. So you'll see Jon Rahm is gaining over 3 strokes per round in his 24 rounds at Torrey Pines. It is a unbelievable rate. Anytime you get over 2, 2.5, 3, you're getting into Tiger-esque range. Obviously, Tiger did it for a decade. Jon Rahm's done it for 24 rounds at Torrey Pines, but it's that impressive. The argument to be made about Jon Rahm this week for me is that you would much prefer to roster him in your daily fantasy formats than to bet on him this week. The outright numbers for Jon Rahm are pretty vicious, and they're asking him to win a full field event at Torrey Pines with a stacked field way more frequently than he's actually going to win it. But the gap in pricing on fantasy sites is much smaller, only $300 more than Justin Thomas. That's much more appealing. That is easier to swallow. I think the way you'd want to deploy Jon Rahm certainly is in fantasy formats. I'm fairly lukewarm on both Justin Thomas and Hideki Matsuyama. If you go back to the Holy Grail here, you'll see Justin Thomas, only a smaller sample size than the rest of these guys, but he's played well at Torrey Pines. Hideki Matsuyama, he's been fine as well. His best finish was a T3 in 2019, and he's actually putted fairly well on these greens. I think those guys are fine. I think maybe the most mispriced guy in the 10,000s is Dustin Johnson, which feels a little bit weird. Let's do a deeper dive into DJ. And if you remember, if you go back to the power rankings here, almost no matter how you want to slice this, weighted or raw numbers, Dustin Johnson's still very much a top 4 or 5 golfer in this field and even on the PGA Tour, despite what we're thinking about him right now. What we're thinking is that he's not been very good, which is shocking. He's probably been a lot better than we would expect. So if we go back and just look at his logs real quick. 8th at the Tour Championship, you can throw that out. It's a staggered start. T6 at the BMW Championship, and then a T45 at Summit Club. We have not seen him since then. We haven't seen him since mid-October. I know there is generally a bit of hesitancy when you're rostering guys for the first time off of a long layoff, but what you're seeing in this column right here, the strokes gained putting numbers are fairly insane. Dating back to the Players' Championship, dating back to basically after he lost 10 strokes putting at the WGC Workday, he's been unreal with the putter. To put it into perspective, let's go last 50 rounds. Let's just do raw data. I don't want anybody even, throwing anything out there about the weighted numbers. He's the 4th best putter in this field over the last 50 rounds. It's Adam Hadwin, it's Adam Schenk, it's Jon Rahm, which is, first of all, crazy that Rahm's the 3rd best putter in this field in the last 50 rounds and everything else that he does well. And then it's Dustin Johnson. And in that stretch, he is basically the same putter as Jon Rahm. What we're not seeing from DJ is the ball striking, right? That's the gap. It's this right here. It's the off the tee where he's lost in 4 of his last 6. It's the approach in which he's lost 4 straight. What we've been doing this year is essentially giving most guys, or almost every guy, credit for kind of getting back to their true DNA, to their real baseline after a layoff. And if you look at the baseline for Dustin Johnson, it is one of the better ball strikers on the tour. Even his down year in 2021, he was still gaining nearly 3/4 of a shot per round in the ball striking categories. He is turning into just an absolutely phenomenal putter. To me, I see this as a lot of room for improvement, right? There is a huge gap that Dustin Johnson can make up if he just gets back to 80% of his ball striking baseline from literally the last 5 or 6 years of his career. We just have a lot of room for growth here. So I think he's probably the most intriguing option in the 10K range. Xander Schauffele, yeah, I think he's exercised his demons a little bit, right? He had missed, I think, 4 out of his first 5 cuts at Torrey Pines. He's a local guy. He then went out and finished runner-up at this event last year, and then he had another top 10 at the U.S. Open. I think he's kind of exercised those demons. Xander's been playing great. I've got no problem if you want to roster him. And then Daniel Berger, I really would have sprinted, and maybe I still will. Maybe I won't sprint. Maybe I'll briskly walk to get access to Daniel Berger, because he is, and I say this countless times, I mean, he's turning into just an elite player. I don't think that's crazy to say. He's a top 10, top 12 player on the PGA Tour. He's finally being priced that way. 7th at the Hero World Challenge, 5th at the Tournament of Champions. He still hasn't lost strokes on approach since his victory at Pebble Beach, which is Poana Greens. I just think that if he can keep it in the fairway, he hits his long irons very well. You're going to have to do that. The only concern I have around Farmers, and I want to see what his history is here. I bet you it's not good. Yeah, it's not. So here's the one issue with Daniel Berger. As much as I love the guy, he loves to play that high cut, high fade, whatever you want to call it. Torrey oftentimes asks you to hit a high draw. And we saw that kind of rear its ugly head at Kapalua in his last start. Remember 18? I think both Saturday and Sunday, Berger sprayed it on 18 because that shot requires you to hit a big high draw. Wasn't able to pull it off, kind of sprayed it out to the right-hand side amongst the people. He's yelling 4, as he tends to do. Good job. Hat tip to you, Daniel Berger. But I worry that he's going to be put into a lot of situations where he's better off hitting a high draw, and that is against his shot shape. And you wonder if that has really kind of proven to be why his results are so poor at this event. So I will tip my cap to you, Daniel Berger. I don't think I can pay the $10,000, but we are going to get, like, we're going to Pebble, right? And he's probably going to be the favorite when we get there. I don't want to root for miscuts. I'm almost rooting for a Daniel Berger miscut so that we can get access to him next week at Pebble Beach. The nines. Oh boy. Do I love the nines. Let's start with Bryson DeChambeau. Everything that I talked about with the club head speed, the driving distance, all of that applies to Bryson DeChambeau. We saw him destroy Torrey Pines for 64 holes at the U.S. Open before he just absolutely collapsed and couldn't find anything. He is dealing with a wrist injury. That is what forced him to withdraw from the Sony Open. I can speculate wildly about the status of that wrist. I'd prefer not to. The concern that I have for Bryson is a little bit about the wrist. It is more so about this third column right here. He has lost strokes around the green in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 consecutive events. That is concerning because Torrey Pines, listen, you play out of, you play greenside a lot. It's kind of how Patrick Reed won this event last year, right? There's a couple ways to do it. You hit every green, you roll in every putt, kind of like Leishman did 2 years ago, or you do what Patrick Reed does and you just get up and down from everywhere. And I'm not sure which version of Bryson wins this other than the winged foot model. So I think I probably just have more concerns about Bryson than maybe things I'm not concerned about. So I'll probably take a pass on him. But look at this. Sam Burns at 9,700. Brooks Koepka at 96. Sam Burns, you're going to look. Everyone's going to look at this and say, oh, wow. Sam Burns finished like T8 or T18 or T19 last year. I don't remember exactly what it was. But that is not really indicative of how he played at Torrey Pines last year. He was in the final group with Patrick Reed. He went out and he four-putted the first green, and he never got back into it. It was one of his worst putting rounds of his career. I think it was his 4th or 5th worst putting round of his career. He is a much better player now. He is more seasoned. He hits it far. He hits it accurate. He's great with the putter. Give me all the Sam Burns that I can get access to. And then Brooks Koepka, when you start cranking up the difficulty at events and you start talking about club head speed and you start talking about tough conditions, that's Brooks's game. And you got to kind of wish it into existence a little bit, right? Because the advanced metrics aren't particularly appealing, especially in the ball striking categories. He finished 4th at the U.S. Open here last year. I do wonder what the industry is going to do with him. We can talk about this on Wednesday, I said Wednesday, the Tuesday live chat, right? Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, when we have more an idea of ownership, because there are so many big names in this field. You wonder how the industry is going to treat Koepka, especially with Sam Burns right there, especially with Will Zalatoris in the $9,000 range, especially with Tony Finau in the $9,000 range. So I'll be really interested to see what Brooks Koepka does. He might end up being a great little pivot. Tony Finau will be popular this week, and it is for good reason. His success at Torrey Pines has been phenomenal. I'm going to show you the results, but I'm going to kind of tell you why he's been so good here, because there's really one key aspect that is driving it. And here you go. T2 last year, T6, T13, T6, T4. That is 5 consecutive top 13s with 4 top 6s. His worst finish in his 6 trips, T24. It's special. Look at the 4th column there. That's strokes gained putting. Only once has he lost strokes putting at this event. Finished T13 in 2019. That's unusual, right? Because Tony Finau, not known for being a really good putter. Maybe he loves these Poa annua greens. He's able to figure them out, and really, the data backs it up. So I have a newsletter that I send out every single week. I'll link it in the description. I've already sent out this week's because I want it to be a living document. I'll update it throughout the week because it's such a quick turnaround. But this is one thing that I included. Torrey Pines is literally Tony Finau's best putting course. Minimum 10 rounds. He has 28 rounds. He's gaining over a half a stroke putting here. Twin Cities is close. Silverado's a third of a round. Quail Hollow a third of a round. But he's got more rounds here and a better putting record. So whatever it is, Tony's been able to roll the rock here. That's kind of been the key to his success, and he's going to be popular. The $8,000 range is kind of interesting. I'm really excited to see what the industry does with Taylor Gooch and Corey Conners. You could argue on paper, this should be a good spot for Corey Conners. You know, he is long and accurate off the tee. He can kind of lean into his strengths as a ball striker. And can't we forgive one missed cut at the American Express? That's his first missed cut since Torrey Pines US Open. So like, that's why I'm so torn, right? It's all the top 20s. It's the rare missed cut, but maybe the results here aren't as good as what I think they should be on paper. So I don't know what the industry is going to do with Corey Conners. I would like to, you know, if he comes in at like 6% owned, I think he's going to be a pretty interesting option, along with Taylor Gooch, although I think Conners probably sets up a little bit better than Gooch does here. We saw a pretty horrendous version of Matthew Wolff. And when Matthew Wolff gets going in the wrong direction, he gets going in the wrong direction quickly. Same thing as when he gets going in the right direction, right? And if we are looking at club head speed, if we're looking at distance, that's your Matthew Wolff comp. Bryson is probably the closest comp for Matthew Wolff, but you have to be willing to take on a ton of risk for that reward at an $8,500 Matthew Wolff. Max Homa, a couple of top 20s here in his last two trips, which kind of makes sense. Max Homa, as we've seen, between the win at Quail Hollow, the win at Riviera, he is really proving to be, I don't want to say great, but maybe it is great on kind of these longer, or maybe I should say more difficult golf courses. And that is what you're going to get this week. And you're going to get Poa greens. And guess what surface is basically Homa's best? Yeah, it's Poa. He's a West Coast guy, right? This should be right up his alley. So I think that's an interesting option in the $8,000 range. And then Ryan Palmer. We've got to have the Ryan Palmer conversation, because if you look at a couple of items here, you look at his recent form. So very recent form, very short-term form. You'll see a guy who has made one cut this year in the only event that he played, but he's made 4 cuts in a row. The last 2 measured events, he's gained multiple strokes off the tee. He's gained strokes on approach. This is a tee to green version of Ryan Palmer that we have not seen since basically his really great run kind of in the summer and towards 2020 as well. But what else do you get from Ryan Palmer? You get a pretty strong history around this event. So he has, well, I shouldn't say never. In the last decade, going back to 2010, he's played this event 5 times. He's never lost strokes on approach. He has 2 runner-up finishes. He has a T21 and a T13. I could get behind Ryan Palmer. I don't think that that's the worst thing that you could do, especially because I think he's off most people's radar, and he's only $8,100, played well at the Sony. I think I could endorse that. The $7,000 range is amazing. You know, Keegan Bradley's at $7,900, and if you really do a deep dive on Keegan Bradley, what do you find? Well, we know Keegan. He's a known entity on the PGA Tour, but he is a staple in the total driving category on the PGA Tour. Total driving essentially is just looking at the rank that you have in driving distance and the rank that you have in driving accuracy. Who's long and who's straight. Keegan Bradley is a staple on that leaderboard last 5 or 6 years. Go look. He's basically top 10 every single year. We're seeing more of the same here in 2022. Great ball striking week at the Sony Open. He gained 9.5 strokes from tee to green. He lost strokes putting. Yeah, exactly what we're expecting from Keegan Bradley. He's had a very good history at the Farmers Insurance Open. 4 made cuts in a row, a 4th, a 5th, a 16th. He's missed 2 cuts in basically, 10 years? It's a really good, he's lost strokes tee to green once in his 10 trips to Torrey Pines. So I'm pretty bullish about this. And at $7,900, I think this is probably one of the better spots that you could roll him out. Otherwise, Lonto Griffin. I know he's over $7,000, which is a little bit scary, but he's played well recently, right? The third place finish at the American Express. He played well at the Zozo. He's got 2 top 12 finishes in his last 3 trips to this event because it makes sense. When Lonto's on top of his game, he's a great approach player and he's a great putter. Those 2 things allow for popping ability. Luke List, 7,600. Luke List is in a stretch, people. Like, let's go look at Luke List because he is he continued the great play from the fall basically into his first start of 2022 at the American Express where he finished T22. Look at the ball striking categories. Look at the putting categories. The thing about Luke List on POA is that he is basically half as bad, twice as good. I don't know what you want to look at it as. He doesn't lose as many strokes on POA as he does on basically any other surface in his career. So maybe this is a place that he can get a little bit of momentum going, as he has done with 4 straight made cuts at this event, 2 top 12 finishes. I've spent a ton of time talking about Aaron Wise over the course of the past 6 months. The short story is this is an elite tee to green player who is getting better with the putter. It's a dangerous combination. Aaron Wise is going to win soon. I don't know when it's going to be. I think it's going to be soon. He is in a really good spot right now. I'll probably take a pass on Snedeker, who has elite course history here. I'll take a pass on Johnny Vegas, who does not putt well on POA. Mito Pereira is here. We have not seen Mito since the RSM, so this is going to be his first start. Remember, he won multiple times, 3 times, got the Battlefield promotion on the Korn Ferry last year, which is how he got his tour card. And when he came out, he was just ball striking machine. He just piled up top 30, top 40 finishes. I think that getting him back in this field at 7,400, I'm a little bit worried because we haven't seen him in so long, but the raw talent certainly there. The rest of the $7,000 range, I'm not as excited about. Patrick Rodgers. Okay, there are molds of guys, right? And there are shorter courses that require accuracy. There's molds of guys. Torrey Pines, there's molds of guys. Patrick Rodgers, one of those guys. If you just go to the Holy Grail and sort by strokes gained putting in this field on Poana greens, Patrick Rodgers, dominant. 51 rounds. He's gaining nearly a stroke per round and also a very good driver of the golf ball. I mean, he's the mold. He's the mold for Torrey Pines. Finished T9 in 2020, finished T4 in 2017, has good finishes at Pebble Beach as well, which is another, Poana green West Coast course. Patrick Rodgers at $7,100 is the type of golfer you should be looking for. That $6,000 range is tough. I'll point out a couple of guys, then we'll go to the power rankings, and then maybe somebody will show up in the custom model. Grayson Sigg is kind of interesting, but he's going to bite off. And this is a big course to bite off, but he is now starting to figure it out a little bit here in 2022. First year with his tour card, didn't get off to the greatest start. He's starting to figure it out. Joseph Bramlett seems to likely be the popular guy. He absolutely bombs it. He finished 18th here last year. He's made 2 cuts in a row. Was on the first page of the leaderboard last week at the American Express, had 2 kind of subpar rounds on Saturday and Sunday, ended up finishing 33rd, but I think at 6,700, a lot of people are going to kind of forgive and forget on Bramlett. Let's go over to the power rankings and just see what we can find here. I'll go last 50, raw strokes gained. Now, strokes gained total. And we'll see what we can find. Taylor Moore is here. He had kind of a weird week last week, but remember, a lot of those rounds are Korn Ferry rounds. Let's see if we can find a guy who's got a lot more rounds on the PGA Tour, and he's 60, and he's in the 6,000. Okay, Peter Uline's here. Still the majority of rounds on the Korn Ferry in his last 50. Dylan Wu, same story. Missed the cut last week. Actually, played better than I think the miscut would indicate, but this is a big course for him. I do worry about that. Adam Schenk is here. Adam Schenk, in pure strokes gained, raw pure strokes gained, all of his rounds are PGA Tour rounds. He's a 26th player in this field. That is a little bit surprising to me. Let's deep dive that a little bit, and then we can run a custom model. but that is a little bit surprising. He's okay on, I mean, he's not great on Poa. It's one of his worst surfaces, but he's closer to average. He's gained strokes on approach in 6 straight. The around the green has been horrible, which is a little bit scary. Maybe a bit reliant on the putter. Yeah, this is super scary to me. Wow. I don't know if I could endorse Adam Schenk. Let's see who else. I mean, Svensson is still here. I'm very high on him, but I'm looking for somebody with a lot of PGA Tour rounds. Pat Perez is 44th in this field. He's got all 50 of his rounds are PGA Tour rounds. He's popped at this event before. The 6K is really hard. The 6K is really, really tough, which is another reason why I think Bramlett is going to be very popular. Barjan, I don't know if you could go back to him after fading on Sunday, and this is just such a big park. Absolutely massive. All right, let's run a custom model and see what we can find. This is available on my website, RickRunGood.com, as is everything that you've seen to this point. Okay, I've got last 24 rounds in here, but I should probably go a little bit. Let's do last 40. We're going to start getting guys playing a lot more. So I am going to lower this, 24 rounds, maybe even 16 rounds at times. But since we still have guys making their first start of the year, I think we got to continue to stay a little bit longer. So I'll go last 40 rounds. Weighted strokes gained total. I kind of want to hit this a lot. Let's do 30. I then want to do driving distance probably in a pretty significant way. Let's do 35. That has got us 65 weights. We have 35 more. So what you could really do, and what I kind of like about this, is you could run basically 2 different models. You could run one like a Patrick Reed model, which are guys that might win this via the short game. Or you could run almost like a Bryson model. I think right now I'm kind of running the Bryson model, but you could run the other one as well. Or maybe we'll run it on the Tuesday live chat. What I will also do, this is one I don't do often, if at all. But I'm going to put like 15 on putts from 5 to 10 feet. Poana greens, they're so hard from this range that you see a lot more missed putts inside 5 feet, inside 10 feet. So I'm going to try that. Add a little bit of, volatility, a little bit of variance to this. So I have 20 left. What do I want to do here with my final 20? I'm just kind of looking at maybe the setup a little bit. It is a par 72. Maybe I could go with par 5 scoring. Maybe I could go with approach from like 175 to 200. Or 200 plus. You do hit some pretty long shots from here. Let me just see if there's anything else that stands out to me. I'm going to pull up the course profile real quick, so bear with me. What I'm looking at is, basically these par 3s can be really tough, tougher than the 4s and the 5s in terms of rankings. Obviously, the 4s and 5s will probably play like easier, right? Par 3s are very difficult on the PGA Tour, but in terms of rankings compared to other courses, so I think maybe one of the bigger separators are par 3 scoring. So let me throw my last 20 on this, and this is kind of an outside the box model for me, right? And which is good. I want to see what this pumps out. So let me sort this by value. Oh boy, I'm in for it. Yeah, Bryson DeChambeau, my number 1 golfer. Yeah, I told you I'm probably building the Bryson model. And there he is. Jon Rahm, number 2. Sam Burns, 3. Yeah. Xander, DJ, Thomas, Matthew Wolff. Yep, that's the Bryson model. Sung J M, Will Zalatoris, Aaron Wise. That's my top 10. That makes sense. I just built the Bryson model. Just for kicks, let me change driving distance to like 10. I'll lower strokes gained, weighted strokes gained total to 15 so that I can crank up strokes gained around the green, which would, strokes gained around the green is obviously being factored into the weighted strokes gained total as well. So that's why I'm chopping that down a little bit. And then I'll ramp up scrambling. And like this would probably give us like the Patrick Reed model. Yeah, Bryson just drops completely. Yeah, okay. Jon Rahm, whose short game is phenomenal, is number 1. So Jon Rahm, that is wild. Jon Rahm shows up in the top 2 in both. How sick is that? Sam Burns as well. Sungjae Im improves. Daniel Berger now shows up. Aaron Wise gets a little bit better. You see guys like this. Mackenzie Hughes and Billy Horschel now jump into the top 10. Spieth gets up to 12. So you're seeing kind of two separate ways to go about doing this. And of course, you could do this infinite ways. But wow, yeah, I've got some decisions to make, and I don't have much time to make them because we're starting on Wednesday this week. Don't forget that the content schedule has changed. I've tweeted it out. It's pinned on my Twitter, @RickRunGood. Let me know who you think is going to win this week. Thank you so much for subscribing, for liking this video on your way out, and we'll talk soon.